There we are. Welcome to the Past Life Regression radio show, where we help you see your life through your spiritual eyes and think through your spiritual mind as a soul. I'm Jonathan Yorks, your host over the next 2 hours of this live call-in internet radio show based on the work I do in my private practice as a past life regression and life between lives regression therapist and spiritual counselor. We are streaming live here every Wednesday at the Go Network at gonet.com. That's GEAUX net.com. You can watch us on Facebook Live, or if you like, you can listen to us on your phone. Just dial in at 641-552-8117, and you'll have a direct line right to the live show. You don't have to press any other numbers. If you want to get a hold of me, you can send me a text at 617-875-6686. That's a direct line to my phone. Please text message if you would. You can message me on Facebook, posting on the show as the show is going. And of course, you can call into the show at 857-366-5444. Tonight's show, the spirituality of oneness. And tonight we have a special guest tonight. Tonight we have a guest who is a friend of mine. This friend of mine who we have these wonderful conversations with about this sort of stuff. This person is an engineer, a nuclear physicist, a quantum theorist, an entrepreneur who presently is the owner of 4 Yoga Smith studios. His name is Steve Parlin. He's going to be on the next part of the program. He's going to bring some of the sciencey stuff in. I'm going to continue to point us back to the spirituality, because the idea behind the show is not to go so deep where we lose the understanding of what the purpose of this show is. Again, to see life through your spiritual eyes, to think through your spiritual mind. One of those qualities within the mind is the realization, or the recognition rather, of oneness. And so in doing that, we bring that into our everyday experience so that we can further qualify what it means to see through our spiritual eyes and think through our spiritual minds as souls. Because when you come to this program, we are biased. We see ourselves as souls being human, but for my particular bias, I see us as the minds of our human machines. And in doing so, our lives have purpose and meaning, and one day the vehicles from which we operate within will cease to function, and we will leave the human lives that we have been living, and we will transition to the spiritual dimension, where we process the human lives and plan for the next lifetime, and partner with all those souls who are our spiritual kin in our families and in our lives for the purpose of helping us grow. This is a spiritual spa, and we dip into this pool of spiritual identity that we are souls living our human lives right now. And everything that is going on is serving us to the end, to the ultimate outcome of growing. And that's how we serve each other. So that's the purpose of this show. That's why we talk about this show. That's why we have the topics of this show. Now, in prior programs, I spoke about the idea of a oneself and the idea of a spirituality of the soul. And I think that's around the 4th episode. Tonight we're going to go a little deeper, not so much about the oneself, but the idea that in life is a oneness. Life in itself, in its purest state, in its most fundamental form, is a oneness. And because of that, there is no separation between us. There is no space between you and I. There's no tube that connects one to another. Literally, we are different forms of a oneness, infinite in the formations that we can have. And within this infinite formation of oneness is our existence, this individuated experience. You know, last week when I talked about everyday spirituality, this is a part of everyday spirituality. The realization that I am a unique form within the oneness of all life. And what does that mean? What is my role? What's my relationship to my being, to the otherness, to everything around me? Because I have this experience of separation. Einstein would say that's the illusion of the senses. In truth, there is no separation. And in that way, how do I relate when I experience otherness, knowing in my mind that there is no true otherness? There is truly, at its most fundamental experience of what we are, of what all this is, we are a oneness. And so that's why during last week's show, by the way, last week's show, I listened to last week's show. I'll tell you, the first 30 minutes of that show, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to the show, episode 10. That was on my game in that moment. It's well worth listening to because it really speaks to contextualizing your mind about living through this identity of you as a soul and living every day as a spiritual being, operating in the spiritual existence that you are in this human existence, this human life you are in. Really good. I answered a few questions on last week's show about the body and the soul and its relationship and other aspects, and then we talked much more about everyday spirituality. And in that part, the more latter part of the show, when I talked about everyday spirituality, I started going into a talk about, how the reflections take place around us. Because in everyday spirituality, we see the life around us as a reflecting field. We project, it reflects. Not only do we project individually, we project collectively. And society around us, the constructs from which we see, is a reflection. It's a giant screen in which we three-dimensionally have created onto. And as we've sculpted the society and then we've taken the human experience and created the environments from which we operate within, as we've done that, we have gone to a kind of movement in most recent, and maybe not most recent, it's always been a part of the human condition. I would say it's part of the unenlightened experience of the human condition, the idea of separateness, the idea of my distinction and your distinction are different. And since we are different, then I'm going to qualify your distinction from my distinction. We are racially different, ethnically different. We're different in the color of our eyes, and the color of our hair. We're different in our beliefs and how we contextualize and understand throughout this entire world of ours. All these different viewpoints, all these different systems of understanding. And we call it diversity. And I mentioned last week, I'm not a big fan of the word diversity because it becomes, again, contextualized. And it can be adopted in a way that people either have a positive or negative experience to it. And I say, no, there is no diversity. There is just different forms of oneness, unique forms, unique expressions of a oneness. And in that way, diversity is not seen as a diversity. It's seen as a sameness, just in different form within the sameness of oneness, like my finger and my toe. And we talked about oneness in that way last week. And I mentioned, well, how does oneness work then? The idea of a oneness. And I said, well, when I stub my toe, does my finger hurt? No, but my entire psyche, my entire body, all my energy is totally drawn down. And I have to really task throughout the day to deal with the throbbing pain of a toe. And that's how oneness works. If somebody gets bitten, they will feel the bruise of the bite, and we will feel the instant drop in the vibrational experience of them as us. We all drop in vibration. Again, why do unto others as others would do unto you? Because the other is you, just another form of you. The old antiquity statements, or whenever those statements were developed over human culture and time, there was intelligence to them. But they could only be understood through the times in which they were in, to the human understanding of life around it. And that's the point of today's talk. Because in this realization of oneness, in the recognition there is no such thing as a separateness, that there was not just forms, different forms of us, that are at our purest level, our essence, we are one. And because we are one, that means something to how we construct the experience of ourselves. Now, right now, we exist within a system that is already constructed. and it operates functionally, and we have adopted it. And some of us are more functional within it than others. Some deal with a greater sense of dissonance in relation to the systems we have developed. People who just don't feel aligned, so to speak, to the energies of attitudes, energies of everyday tasking and distractions, how we devise these distractions. And as we have qualified them as a means of existing. And that's okay. I don't mind the theater that has been created. I mind that the theater, which is a theater that is morphed through time, I mind that as it morphs again, we either do it consciously or unconsciously. I'm a big fan of consciously. I don't know about you. I prefer to live my Jonathan life consciously. I prefer to live within the system of life consciously. I just prefer that. I don't like being unconscious. Even though I allow myself, like I said last show, intentional moments of unconsciousness. When I'm watching my sporting events or watching my TV and getting lost in a program, or watching my son, like I said last week, play his sports, or lost in conversation with a mind that just seems to flow organically back and forth within the dialogue of the conversation. I don't mind becoming unconscious in those moments. But like I said last week, becoming unconscious in the moments where you're meant to have presence, that is not allowed. Not because it is a wrongness, because it generates a disturbance. And that disturbance, if we have a disturbance, it's meant to be attended to. Otherwise, you wouldn't have disturbance. And we all have disturbance. Not one of us exists within the day, within the life, within the time that we are existing, in the lifetimes we're in, without having moments of disturbance. And in everyday spirituality, it's knowing how to contextualize that so that you do not act out disturbed. It's okay to feel the disturbance. It's not okay to act it out in that way, because it doesn't contribute to the movement towards our natural state of movement, and that is towards harmony. We are always moving towards greater states of harmony, to that moment when we are uniquely harmonious. And the moment we find that moment of pureness, of harmony, boop, we'll collapse again into a state of disharmony, and we'll continue to move through stages, because that's how growth goes. So you'll move into your moments where you feel very harmonious, but your growth doesn't stop there. And so as we're working together in this greater oneness that we all share, it's understanding in this part that I talked about last week about everyday spirituality, that these people are partners of ours. These are our spiritual kin. These are ones that were requested, that were chosen, that had agreements with you and said, yes, I will be that for you because I will feel challenging to you. And as I am challenging to you, or I will imprint a condition within you that you will be challenged by, that is our relationship to each other, because you are seeking to grow, and this is the means from which you are seeking to grow through. And I value all aspects of growth. Now, I'm not a fan of the human condition and the feeling of harsh moments of growth. They hurt. And those are painful, and I value the fact that when people are going through that, I give them nothing but the highest regard. But to grow through extreme conditions of pain, of dissonance, of disharmony, extreme moments, that's a soul that's seeking to do something quite incredible for themselves. They're really seeking to grow in a way that those of us who don't go through such moments could never understand. But I value all journeys, from the ones that seem to be most extreme to the ones that seem to be just most contented. Because even in the ones that are most contented, they will have their challenges. We all do. And in recognizing this, we relate to each other, and as we do, we through our relationship, we identify that our relationship has such depth of meaning, because our relationship is a relationship of oneness within oneness. We are individuated frequency fields within the ocean of life, just like unique droplets, each one of us, just like fingerprints, unique in your own expression, in your frequency state. There is no other like you. And that's what makes you so special. That's what makes every one of us so special. And the thing is, like I said last week, we can't do it without each other because we are each other in the view of oneness. In the guise that in this oneness, there is a means of relationship that helps serve the growth of being one. And we're going to be talking about that, certainly, as we move into the next part of the program. But I want to go a little further in this moment, because I talked about spirituality last week. And I just want to remind you what I mean by the spirituality of oneness, as what I meant by everyday spirituality, as I mean by the spirituality of the soul, and every other title that may contain the word spirituality within it. That our spirituality is our expression. It's not just expression through actions. It's expression through feeling, expression through thought. And so your everyday spirituality, your spirituality within the family system that you are within, that is a means of not just expression, but within that expression, a means of recognition of what is taking place and how it all operates. And when you gain that kind of insight, as I talked about in the spirituality of the family, these others are your spiritual kin. If you are activated, it's your responsibility to grow from that. It doesn't mean you have to act out. If you don't have an answer, if you don't have a response, like I said, then allow yourself time to sit back, not react. That's a choice as well. You don't have to react, like I said, unless it's blood and bones, urgency moments. Well, you have to react, of course. But that nature, these others who are in your family, they are a part of our oneness. The individuated nature of their being and the individuated nature of our being in relation to the nature of all being. If I maintain a dissonant relationship with them, for whatever rationale I have in the mind of my human self, it will always be emotionally based, never logically based, because it's not spiritually based. And spirituality is based on what is known in life. Not what is wished for in life. What is known. And if we know that we break this all down to its essence, that this is a oneness, and we are a part of oneness. We are individuated droplets within the ocean of oneness. Well, then everyone deserves that consideration in relation to the feeling, the experience, the illusion of otherness. When you deny your relationship to that recognition of dissonance that you experience with another, you deny your own growth. Period. The end. But not just your own growth. You deny all our growth. Because we all benefit from your growth. And yes, sometimes somebody has to lead the horse to the water. Absolutely. And yes, sometimes one has to take that position. The one with awareness, the one with a knowing, takes that role. Understanding that in that recognition is a realization of oneness, and that you seek to grow. That is your ultimate quest here in your human lifetime. And everything around you is a reflection of that. Because within the idea of oneness is that a state of what I would call projection reflection. Think of the mind like a projector and the material world like the screen. It is a reflection of the projection. Now the projector needs a screen to reflect upon, and the reflection needs a projector to project upon it. Otherwise, the projection has nothing to reflect, and the reflection represents nothing that has been projected. And if that made sense. Understanding that in this relationship, when you share a dissonance with another, when you share a dissonance with the world in its own way, in a job, with your car, whatever it may be, with your finances, with anything that you most desire to fulfill that you see as bringing you a quality of resonance, a quality of harmony from the state of disharmony. Well then, it's recognizing that this relationship is something that is meant to move you forward, and your responsibility is to know what that relationship is. And at the core of this relationship is a oneness. And we share that with one another. And in doing that, we help each other grow. Now, it's not just oneness with each other. It's oneness within your own being. Oneness kind of, if you think of it, it's contextualized through a lot. You're an individuated entity. You are a unique oneness in your own nature, in your own being, in relation to all the other unique onenesses around you in this otherness experience. And in your oneness, you are going to have thoughts. You are going to have feelings. These aren't yours. These are your conditions that help you see yourself. And that's the other nature of our spirituality, of our everyday spirituality, of our spirituality with our friends, our families, of the world around us. Because our thoughts and our feelings are that feedback to our system of our self, to us. And so when you hear dissonant thoughts, when you feel dissonant feelings, you don't need to judge them. You don't need to contextualize them, good or bad, right or wrong. No. That's the human experience needing that kind of referencing. The human brain, because it needs to categorize its experience to qualify its relationship to the world around it. And I think it was in the last program, I talked about the evolution of belief systems and how the human animal progressed through the belief system of first morphing from this unaware state to a very primitive form of distinction of itself towards an otherness. Listen to it. It's towards the end. I believe it's the last show. Really, I'm really curious to hear people's thoughts, but I really think it is a very logical understanding of the psychological nature of the human animal and its evolution with its brain through time. And I said this in that part, that what I noticed in my little boy is that children in their first stages of brain development mimic microcosmically what the human animal has done macrocosmically in the evolution of the brain and the evolution of its consciousness and self-awareness through time. Take a listen to that part. It's a very interesting part. I'd be curious to hear any feedback. I'll be mentioning it much more again in other shows, but I just want to make a mention of it now. But in relation to all this, in relation to the work we're talking about today, the idea of spirituality, yes. Now, they emphasize the idea of oneness. Well, I've been touching upon this all along. And it all sounds good in this kind of metaphysical way. Yeah, oneness. How cool. How groovy. Oneness. We are one. Have a flower, Jonathan. I love flowers, by the way. Nothing wrong with receiving flowers whatsoever. I appreciate such things. But the idea that it is not a metaphysical reality. It is a physical reality. We are literally, even in the physical nature, let's not even talk energy. We're just talking atomic nature. We are a oneness. And my friend will help clarify what that means because he can explain it much better than I ever can. It comes down to a recognition that our nature breaks down to a quality of oneness. The idea of the emergence of monotheism from polytheism, from paganism, and then from animism, and the evolution of belief systems through this kind of contextualizing between what is the otherness out there that is bigger than me and what is the otherness inside of me that when I sleep at night runs through all these environments and I'm just waking up in my bed. And I talked about that's how we became aware or started to contextualize something inside of us, the identity of maybe a soul as the human brain developed and started to contextualize further its nature and understanding of its relationship, not only to its outer world, but to its inner world. And along the way, it came into this kind of monotheistic movement, the one God and its creation. And when you see it as an evolutionary, as a developmental stages of the human brain, and how it came to that point of monotheistic view, you would see it as a natural evolution of psychology within the brain itself. And again, go back to that part. In the very end of last week, I think it's last week's program, pretty sure it was that last week's program. But the quality of that, the recognition that as we moved along, as we gained these relationships of understanding, we have morphed. We have gained such a deeper understanding. Quantum science tells us something that we couldn't identify before, something that we didn't have the capacity to understand, but we do now. Science helps us see our nature as spirituality, well, as spiritual beings. And as we understand our nature as spiritual beings, within the operating system from which we are within the human experience we are within, because we are in these cellular forms, no doubt about it. There is a materiality to it. There is a particle nature to life. Yet the particle nature is not separate from its wave nature. And its wave nature is all a field of infinite wave patterns that we are made of. Unique, of course. And we'll talk even a little bit how consciousness, how mind seems to create this coalescence of the wave experience that we are, this particle nature of who we are in relation to life all around us, in relation to the ocean that creates our existence. I mean, if we go really, if we structure our lives, if we structure our relationships, if we structure our societies, because we're not just oneness with each other. We're oneness with everything, with nature. And nature has a natural equilibrium within its own oneness. And we are an extension of that. We are the forms that we are our natural outcome of the world, the natural world in that sense. So there's an organic relationship to all this that we can share, but not only just organic, not just in the physical nature, in our nature, in how we work with the world around us, in our relation to the oneness, but our energetic nature. Because certainly this world, the Gaia consciousness, has its own consciousness, like my body has its own consciousness, like I spoke of last week when I answered the question around the idea of DNA, that the genetic nature of your body is a consciousness in itself. Now, the genetic nature is not just in the body, it's in the brain as well. Your entire format that you are as a human life form. You know, the blueprint that generates you. But the DNA are the switches that come on and off that create the experience of the life form that you are and the human that you are being. But it's still a vehicle to which you operate within, a vehicle to which you one day will leave. And when you do, the I am who says, I am in the body, will one day say, I am outside of the body. And that I am and that which you are, inside and outside the body, will be the same one. Unchanged. The only distinction, location, from inside to outside. One moment I am in my car, the next moment I step out of my car. So I hope that we kind of, 7:30, great. We are going to now move into taking a little break. We're going to go much more into the spirituality of oneness. We're going to have our guest, Steve Parlin, on the show. Steve is a nuclear physicist, quantum theorist, entrepreneur, and very cool. Something else about Steve that I'll probably disclose with Steve before I introduce him, which is something really cool about Steve as well. We'll engage in a conversation. He's going to bring the science parts into it, and I'm going to continue to reference back to the spirituality so that you can gain a deeper relationship to the idea of oneness. Now, this is going to go a little deeper. absolutely will go deeper. And it may challenge you to have to pause for a moment and reflect upon what is being said. That is fine. If you feel you're not following it all the way through, you can listen to this again. I've my YouTube channel, Past Life Regression Radio Show. I have the first 6 episodes on there, and I plan on getting the rest on there. Knock on anything I can knock on, the wood that's beneath me, by next week's show. So I'll have all 10, including this, 11 shows. We've had 11 shows to this point. But you can always go back. You can go to the YouTube channel, and you can listen to any past episode. Or if this episode seems to go to a place where it's like, I'm trying to follow, and I'm not quite certain if I'm following clearly, no problem. Go back, and you can listen to it again. And pause and reflect. Someone told me a very interesting thing. They said that on Wednesdays, they get together from 7 to 9 with a few of their friends, and they'll sit around, and maybe they'll share a glass of wine, whoever they seem to sit and get comfortable in the moment of socializing and listening. And then they have a discussion about what was spoken of afterwards. How cool is that? What a way to engage in that way. Because these are fun topics to talk about. The idea that you are a soul being human and that you are now presently in your human life, that is just an incredible dialogue. And what a conversation to have. What a discussion to have with your friends. I applaud that. So I applaud anybody, and I would encourage it. Call up your friends. Gather together. Socialize in the way that y'all, who knows, sit around on the couch, light a fire, put on some blankets, have a glass of wine or a beer, or not, of course, whatever it is that's going to help you get in the place where you can be here and have a great time swimming in this pool that we are souls being human, seeing through your spiritual eyes and thinking through your spiritual mind as a soul. If you ever want to get a hold of me, you can always go to my website, jonathanyorks.com, go to the contact page, and please feel free to schedule an initial telephone consult with me. Either just discuss anything I just discussed in the shows, or if you'd like to come in for services for past life regression, life between lives regression, or spiritual counseling. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have. This is a complimentary call. There is no charge for such a conversation. I really enjoy doing that. I'm more than happy to spend my time on the phone with you, if you like. You can also text me at 617-875-6686 if you're seeking to contact me, or you can call me, of course, on the same number. You can also email me at jonathan@mysoulmyself.com. Jonathan@mysoulmyself.com. So, this is the Past Life Regression Radio Show. I'm Jonathan Yorks. We're here every Wednesday from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Go Network at gonet.com. We'll see you in 5 minutes, and we'll bring our guest in, and we'll have a fun time talking about spirituality of oneness. See you soon.
Have you always wanted to make your own podcast? Or had dreams of becoming the next social media influencer? Don't let office space and equipment be what gets between you and your dreams. New studio space is now available through the Go Network. The Go Network is a multimedia broadcast company that currently hosts live radio shows and podcasts. With microphones to fit all guests, the ability to video record interviews, a stage for band performances, and an editing suite to put your audio and video content to the next level. The Go Network will provide assistance with producing, editing, sponsorship outreach, marketing, and more. You can create the podcast or web series you want with the lower price tag. Visit our studio location in Norwood or our audio suite in Canton. For more information, call us at 857-445-0424 or email us at info@gonet.com. That's info@geauxnet.com.
Has your computer seen better days? Is it always freezing and lagging? Are you constantly plagued with pop-ups and viruses? Are you not able to get any work done? You don't need a new computer. You need Phoenix Technology Support. With just one call to Phoenix Technology Support, you will never have to stress over the hassles of taking your computer to a repair shop again. Just leave your computer right where it is and let us come directly to you. Phoenix Technology Support has over 10 years of experience in the industry of customer support and IT solutions, and it's the best place for help with all of your home or business electronics. From gaming systems to tablet setups, smartphones to smart TVs, even business servers and emails. We will help set up or troubleshoot almost any technology in your home or office. So next time you think your technology is at the end of its life, have it rise from the ashes like a phoenix by calling Phoenix Technology Support at 617-658-3240. That's 617-658-3240, or go to www.phoenixtechboston.com.
Aren't you tired of your plain white walls? Do you ever wonder why you feel uninspired at the office or feel like your home lacks character? It's always the same boring walls over and over again. Well, it's time for a change. Visit walldecore3d.com and order wall panels that will turn your walls into beautiful and extravagant looking accent walls. The 3D wall panels give an extra dimension and complement just about any room. Their current selection includes plant fiber wall paneling, MDF wood wall panels, mosaic real wood paneling, and thin slate stone veneer. Remember, that's walldecore3d.com. Order now and add some depth to your life.
When I'm feeling sluggish, I'm not looking for the jittery feeling of coffee. I'm reaching for Neurosonic, the only energy drink I trust to keep me going. Neurosonic is just one of the great drinks in the neurofunctioning beverages line. When I'm stressing an interview, Neuro Bliss keeps me cool, calm, and collected. And when it's time to call it a night, I don't want sleeping pills and all the crazy after effects you hear about. I want Neuro Sleep to help me drift off to dreamland. Neuro drinks are surprisingly low calorie and full of the healthiest and most efficacious vitamins and minerals. Artificial flavors and colors don't work for them, and neither should they for you, so they don't allow them in their drinks. To find a store near you that carries Neuro, go to drinkneuro.com or visit amazon.com to order a 12-pack. Neuro, drink with a purpose.
If you're just hearing about Monk Therapeutic Air for the first time, it's a recyclable diffuser that promotes mood change and life-enhancing effects through our custom blends of essential oils and the ancient practice of aromatherapy. Monk is the simplest aromatherapy device in history. You don't have to know anything about essential oils. We do all that for you. Simply pick the way you want to feel, open your Monk, and breathe in as your Monk diffuses an eclectic blend of essential oils and wild plant extracts. Monk is available in 7 different blends, all of which are organic, natural, and free of nicotine, tobacco, or artificial chemicals. Visit monq.com to learn more.
Are you in need of stickers, be it for personal or business use? Then you need to go to stickeru.com right now. That's stickeryou.com. Sticker U is passionate about providing you and your business with the highest quality custom stickers, labels, decals, and iron-ons. They can even make you temporary tattoos. If you want to stick out from the competition, then you need Sticker U, as Sticker U provides the best platform in the world to create custom products that make you stick.
So who are the real original housewives? Well, Sarah, Esther, Mary, and Ruth. Proclaim this and other Bible references on a shirt at onebodyonespirit.com. One Body, One Spirit is a Christian-themed clothing store for ladies and men that allows believers to express their faith, glorify God, and start conversations through something as simple as a t-shirt. Plus, a portion of every purchase is donated to charities. Their website is onebody.spirit.com to view their clothing selections. onebodyonespirit.com.
I'm going to the hardware store.
Oh, will you pick up 800 lumen bulbs?
800 more flowers? The neighbors will think we're wacky.
Not flower bulbs, light bulbs.
Come on, Dad. Lumens tell you how bright the bulb is. We can replace our 60-watt bulbs with energy-saving bulbs that give off about 800 lumens.
So, we'll save money.
Right.
Got it. 800 lumens and more savings.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
I'm Jonathan Yorks, and you're listening to the Past Life Regression Radio Show. Welcome back to the Past Life Regression Radio Show, where we help you see your life through your spiritual eyes and think through your spiritual mind as a soul. We are coming into the next part of our program here at the Go Network, where we're going to be inviting our guests pretty shortly. My guest today is Steve Parlin, and Steve Parlin is an engineer, nuclear physicist, quantum theorist, entrepreneur. Steve is quite an incredible guy, and frankly, he's one of the greatest minds I know in discussing the idea of the quantum nature of life, the science of life. Steve has a wonderful way of explaining things. Hopefully, I will be able to continue to keep us directed into the nature of oneness in the spirituality of oneness, because I'm always curious about all this, what it means to us in our spiritual nature as souls, that we are truly, truly individuated within a field of oneness. And if you notice the advertisements that I sent out, whether on your email or on Facebook, and if you didn't receive one, you please, and I'm more than happy to send it out to you, but I sent a picture with a droplet of water. In the middle it says Spirituality of Oneness, and it's promoting the show. And I have 3 quotes on there, one from a Swami Vivekananda, one from Edwin Schrodinger, and one from Three Dog Night. And I just want to read these quotes, because you're talking 3 different statements that really speak, even from the musicians, that really speak to an experience we all share. And these are pretty higher-minded folk, I would say. So Swami Vivekananda was a Hindu monk in the 19th century who brought Hindu philosophies to the Western culture, and he became quite well known and quite well revered. And he said this: all differences in this world are of degree and not of kind, because oneness is the secret of everything. Different degrees, not different kinds. I won't explain that, but I think you get it. The next one, Edwin Schrodinger. He is a father of quantum science. He's the one who basically calculated or introduced the idea of a wave function. So he's one of the originators of quantum science. And he writes this: quantum physics thus reveals a basic oneness of the universe. So the idea of oneness, not of oneness they're speaking of. And even in the physics nature, in the science nature. So here we have one of these great spiritual minds of Swami Vivekananda. Believe me, he's not the only spiritual mind who has said such a thing. Many great spiritual minds have said such things about the idea that life is a oneness. In its true nature, it is a oneness. And then we have somebody like Edwin Schrodinger and other great quantum-minded people, quantum theorists out there who identify that the physical nature of life actually breaks down to a oneness. And then the last part, Three Dog Night, the song, "One is the Loneliest Number." Now think about that. There's a reason why I included that quote. Because 1 truly is the loneliest number. If there is oneness, and it's just a oneness without anything elseness, gosh, that has to be incredibly lonely. So the idea of oneness, moving in its experience of itself, recognizes in some quality of itself, beyond the movement of knowing itself, there's a movement of desire, of relationship almost. A movement in that relationship, there was a recognition, a desire to not be alone. Because if we think about it, I get it. We would absolutely feel that feeling of Imagine being a oneness with nothing elseness but oneness. And that's it. How long could you exist in such a state? At some point, in order to be a oneness, I guess you'd have to be in everythingness as well. For you couldn't have a oneness without, I guess, when I'm using this term, everythingness. And I guess in that way, I hope my guest tonight can help us further understand that. And I believe he is there. He is on the line. Thank you, Dimitri. My guest tonight, Steve Parlin. Now, Steve, like I said, is an engineer. He's a nuclear physicist, quantum theorist, and entrepreneur. Has 4 Yoga Smith studios. He'll tell us more about that as I introduce him. And I'm just going to put on my headphones in this moment. And Dimitri, whenever you're ready. Steve, you there?
Jonathan, how are you?
Ah, wonderful. So glad you could join us, Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me on, and hello to everyone listening.
Ah, that's awesome. So, Steve, I was introducing you, as you know, and, you gave me some of your background. Certainly, I know of you, of course. Steve and I are friends, just so you all know. But I love our friendship because Steve and I engage in these conversations that go to different strata. And so hopefully tonight, Steve, we can keep it somewhat level for people who are listening.
Yeah, we won't go off the charts, but I do enjoy our conversation.
Especially if we've had a couple of glasses of wine in us, forget it. Then we hit the stratosphere.
That gets worse.
Now, there's a really cool thing about Steve. Steve, if you don't mind me mentioning, and maybe you might, and then you'll let me know probably after the show.
Fire away.
Steve not only has worked as a nuclear physicist, not only is he a quantum theorist and an entrepreneur. By the way, Steve, Yoga Smith, where are they located?
So they're in Exeter, Portsmouth, Dover, and we just opened in Amesbury, Massachusetts.
Wonderful. And they can just go to like a Yoga Smith website?
Yeah, yogasmith.com, and you can check it out. Again, this kind of started from all of the things that you and I discussed, so it's been an interesting path for me.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Steve has been, again, very entrepreneurial and many other things that go on. But something about Steve's background that I think is one of the coolest things. I'm going to mention it, Steve. Steve, in his prior incarnation, in this life that is, was a champion jet skier. Is that right? Right, Steve? Am I have that right?
That's right. And every listener is saying, what on earth is that?
Your jet skis, you folks, you all seen jet skis out there, right? You've seen them out there in the ocean. Well, there is a sport. And let me tell you, these sports are radical. You got to be an athlete, like any other athlete out there. It requires incredible physical exertion. It requires incredible concentration. And Steve was a champion in this. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
20 years ago, but yes.
Yeah.
The time flies.
And Steve doesn't it? It's amazing. It's amazing. And now Steve in his present incarnation in this moment was willing to come on with us and talk to us about the spirituality of oneness. And thank you very much, Steve, as we start to enter into this topic. Steve, my first appreciate. Steve, the first thing that when I speak about oneness, I'm always I'm engaging the idea of the conservation principle of energy. And I've always titled it as the first law of thermodynamics, but you have corrected me on this actually. And so for all those, just so I can introduce it for a second, folks, when we enter into this conversation about the law of thermodynamics and the law of energies and things as such, I'm hoping that Steve will help give us a better way of understanding it than I can ever give you. So, Steve, I put a little pressure on you there in the moment. Sorry, buddy.
So that you're talking about the law of conservation of energy.
Yes.
And, the laws of thermodynamics, there's 4 of them. And really, they call on that law, which basically states that energy can't be destroyed or created. It can only change in form within a closed system. So you'll have a certain amount of energy that stays in that system, and it can only change in form.
And
meaning,
please.
If I make a noise or if I throw a rock, some of its energy actually goes into noise. Some comes off as light. Some is transferred into mechanical energy through its motion. So there's a conservation of energy that always is maintained.
And it's under the guise that it's under a closed system. So the universe in which we exist in, would that be considered a closed system?
It would. There are several exceptions to that rule. The major one would be what we'd call a black hole, which would be the place where energy may actually escape or information may escape our system. Now, this is an area where physicists still haven't come to terms with, and there's still debate around it. The late Stephen Hawking actually said that the energy is maintained in a form of something called Hawking radiation, which we won't get into in tonight's show. But just to let you know that that's still in debate. People are still working on that very problem. But for all intensive purposes, the universe that we live in, we can consider a closed system.
Okay. And if that's the case, and now we're going to shift a little bit to looking at it and relating it to more of a spiritual experience, the idea of spirituality and this idea of a closed system. In this closed system, within itself, mean, I've read these quotes of oneness at the beginning, and one by Edward Schrodinger, who basically says, that that the universe, that the physical nature of the universe is a oneness. What does that mean for us? How can we best understand that in relation to who we are, to each other?
Yeah, he was mainly speaking of some of the findings that came out of early quantum physics, and they kind of drove us into this definition of oneness, and it came from an area of physics that many people tried to actually disprove. So Einstein was one of them, Rosen and Pratt were the others, and they set out to disprove quantum mechanics because it seemed so contrary to everything that people believed at the time. And they said, there's no way this could be possible, because if this is real, if quantum physics actually is a real thing, then we're all connected. There's some weird universal consciousness controlling all of us, and that, as Einstein quoted, God's playing dice. And he didn't believe it.
Okay, let me understood.
Go ahead, John.
Understood. Let me ask you this then, because explain to us in layman's understanding, when you say quantum science, quantum theory, quantum mechanics, help my listeners, if you can, if it's possible, sure, help them understand what this means, the idea of quantum mechanics, what these sure, great minds were talking about.
Well, quantum actually comes from from a Greek word which basically means it's the smallest unit that you can have of something that can't be divided anymore. Uh-huh. So a quantum would be the smallest constituent part of any type of system. So with our universe, when we look at that as a closed system, a quantum element in that universe is basically the fundamental building block of that entire universe. So the smallest possible thing that is there, that is what everything else is made of. And so that's what the word quantum comes from.
Let me ask you this, and that's really cool. I got you there. I got you there because I had a question as you were explaining this. So if everything is made from this one particle, let's say this smallest unit, this quanta, then we are all made of this.
Correct.
Okay. The entire universe is made of this.
That is right. Yep.
And thus, in that way, as a fundamental part of what generates or creates our existence, we are kind of just like, I almost see it like waves on the surface, or bubbles actually on the surface of something. That we are.
It's interesting that you mentioned waves. Yes.
Okay.
That's a big part of quantum theory.
Please, go further if you would.
Sure. Well, quantum theory, it started by analyzing the very small. So one way that we can try to understand our surroundings and the greater world and universe that we're in is to use a microscope, and even better microscope to look even smaller. And we're basically looking to get to the fundamental building block, that quanta. And for years, we couldn't go that far down. We saw the atom. And so we knew we were made of atoms. But later, with advances in science, we broke that atom, and we were able to see that atoms that we're all made of, and everything in the universe is made up for matter, all atoms were essentially 99.99999% space.
Wow.
Which is mostly nothing.
Right.
And the rest of that was small fundamental particles, quarks, and you can go even smaller. And essentially, in the end, when we go all the way down to the quantum, it becomes a string, a vibrating piece of energy. And the rest of it is space. So if you look at the universe, it's all just vibrating pieces of energy, which is not what we expected. But that is the fundamental building block of the universe.
So what did we expect then?
We expected to end at a fundamental particle. And when we found the vibrating piece of energy and the way that it behaved, it didn't behave like a particle at all. It behaved like a wave. And it's actually called a wave function.
Okay.
The interesting part is that the wave function that we found was very similar to a thought wave, which is just an electromagnetic wave.
No, so let's pause there for a second.
Go the universe is space and thought.
Wow. Okay. Wow. The universe If we take, no, come on, we're talking physics here. We're not talking, we're pulling things out of the
Harry Potter.
Yeah, no, right on. This isn't magic. This isn't mysticism. This is what is known. And if we are looking at what is known, what you're saying in that statement is that thought and matter are two sides of the same coin?
Yeah, essentially that there is something underlying the universe, and this is what Schrödinger talked about and many of his peers, is that the fundamental underlying piece of the universe could be what they consider a universal consciousness that actually gives rise to matter through its own consciousness.
Understood.
So that was the statement. That's what bothered Einstein. It's what bothered everyone else.
Gotcha.
In trying to disprove it, those scientists proved quantum physics, found concrete proof that it existed, and made it the science that it is today, because it was just a theory at the time.
So if we bring this back to the spirituality of oneness, see, when I speak of the spirituality of oneness, I say that you and I aren't connected to each other. You and I are literally different forms of each other. Is that an accurate statement?
It is, and actually, I like that you're talking about the separateness, because I honestly feel that to talk about oneness, it's very important to talk about separation and separateness. So there's an analogy I could give you, in which we talk about a rainbow, and I think this one might be, fairly easily understood. We take a rainbow, which is essentially created from a beam of white light. Now, it comes from our sun, it comes from a light bulb, whatever the source. It's a beam of white light, and you can't really tell much about it. It has tons of possibility, and there's a lot that exists within that white light, but for us, it's hard to see. It illuminates things when it hits it, and that's about it. But let's let that beam of white light, which is one beam, hit a prism. And it could be a crystal, a diamond ring, a drop of water, a raindrop.
Sure.
That is going to turn into a myriad of colors. Okay, as soon as it hits that, you're going to actually see a rainbow come out on the other side. You've got blues and purple and green and yellow. And those light, that light that is separated now, is measurable and very different. It's beautiful. Its diversity is amazing. However, each portion of light in that spectrum that's splayed across your floor or wherever it's hitting is very unique. There is unique properties. Infrared light we can't see, but it's still in that spectrum. UV light we can't see, but that's in the spectrum. It causes different things to react. So in talking about oneness, I feel that we should talk about how do we get to separation, and it's typically by going through some form of filter. Now, is there philosophical reasons behind that? There could be. Separateness technically allows for the grandeur and beauty of that oneness to be expressed, because we never see that rainbow inside that white light, but it's there. Its potential is there. And until it hits a filter, you never know that it's actually all the colors that it could be.
Sure. So in that, first thing, thank you. That's a fantastic analogy, because as you're telling me this analogy, I'm getting the understanding that one, of course, the light that has gone through the filter, the different frequencies, the different colors that emerge from it, one, are not separate from the white light. They are still a frequency within this oneness of white light.
Yeah, they are the white light. They're just a piece of it at a certain frequency.
So separation.
And the reason why I mentioned it is because that's how our particles work too. I talked about those tiny little pieces of energy that make up the fundamental building blocks.
Right.
Well, they're all the same energy that makes up the whole universe. And it's the frequency at which they vibrate that determine what they actually become for matter. So a carbon atom or a hydrogen atom, an electron, they're all vibrating at different frequencies.
Understood. So basically, we could see the universe in which the physical nature of this universe as a totality, as a oneness that is filtered through some sort of, we'll call it a prism based on your analogy. And through that, we get this kind of different frequencies that emerge from it. And when we see these frequencies, these different vibrations, so to speak, these different strings, they take on different qualities. And one would be maybe a carbon atom. Another one would be a helium atom. I mean, it sounds like, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they become the basic building blocks, but they're very separate, unique building blocks they become because they pass through some filter.
But even though they pass through that filter, are they separate from the light that passes through the filter?
They're not. They're still connected by it. And so, when we look at oneness, it's very easy to perceive separateness. Mm-hmm. But oneness kind of talks about the origin, not just in a current state of existence, but also the origin. So they originated, and they're created from the same thing, but they vibrate differently and expose themselves differently. So they appear separate. It's kind of an illusion. And I believe that's what the early physicists were talking about.
I can see why they feel that was a little too far out for them, because that takes the whole particulate nature of life, the atomic nature of life, and it just makes it too metaphysical.
Sure.
I can see that. So again, I'm just fascinated. All these particles, all this that emerges from the filter, we say separation, but you say separation is an illusion. That in truth we are not separate from each other.
Correct.
From the particles that generate our existence. And from the oneness or the consciousness that is moving through the filter that generates us. So are we separate from it, or no?
Well, that's where the debate is. So that's where the research goes on. Okay. So there is technically no separateness, because in quantum physics, the smaller we look and the closer we look at something and the smaller particles we examine, we realize that there's really no space in between them. And there's maybe no time at that level, which is very hard concept to imagine, because we as creatures of the fourth dimension, we require time for function.
Right.
But there's something called quantum entanglement, which is kind of hard to describe, but it's one of the properties that Einstein and Pratt and Rosen found out when they tried to disprove the theory. They actually stumbled upon this, and it wasn't even a theory before that. So they found this in trying to disprove it.
I love when I love when things are stumbled upon, by the way. To me, that is that's the most fun. That's when stuff gets real. When we stumble upon this, Madame Curie stumbling upon radiation, beautiful. Beautiful. Granted, she wasn't happy at the end result of that stumbling upon, but, still beautiful.
That's right.
Well, Dr. Newton, Brian Weiss. Dr. Newton, his work on life between lives regression. Brian Weiss and his work on many lives, many masters and past life regression. These people stumbled upon these moments. That's when great discoveries are really discovered. So please, go on.
A guided stumble.
True.
Yeah, they definitely stumbled upon this quantum entanglement, which, if I were to describe it, I guess I could say that if you and I were holding apples, and we brought these apples into contact with each other. Now, let's pretend these apples function just like fundamental particles, so the smallest particles that we're talking about, maybe a photon of light, which is a very small particle of energy. If we bring these apples in connection with each other, they become entangled in the quantum world. Now, quantum world, anytime I say quantum, we're talking really, really small, not our macro world.
Gotcha.
Even though we're generated and comprised of all quantum material.
Gotcha.
So in the quantum world, we bring these apples together, and they become entangled. They swap energy. They know each other in some odd way that we can't describe, and they take on each other's properties and likewise each other's cause and effect. So later, I take my apple and I drive to Maine, and you drive to Florida. Okay? And my apple, I drop it, and it bruises. Under quantum entanglement, your apple bruises at the same time. Now, we're separated by, 1,500 miles. And there's no reason that your apple should bruise when my apple bruises.
So let me ask you this.
But that's how it works in quantum entanglement.
I got you. And folks, let me bring you back to something. when I talk about oneness, and I said, in the context of oneness, my finger and toe, they're two different things, and yet they're contained in a one body. If I stub my toe, my finger doesn't hurt, my toe aches. And I said, I also mentioned that as well, that if someone bites you, you will feel the bruise, where we all feel the instantaneous effect of this bruising. That's what Steve is talking about here on the quantum level, this quantum entanglement, that the moment something happens in one area, it happens in the next area instantaneously, as if it was happening in the same moment. So when he drops that apple, the bruising in that moment instantaneously is bruising in the apple that I may be holding on to thousands of miles away. But Steve, let me ask you this, but quantum entanglement, is it only two particles, or are all the particles entangled?
Now systems become entangled as well. And so it wasn't until actually the last 15 years that we were able to prove that systems can become entangled, larger particles. Wow. And as a matter of fact, it is the basis for quantum encryption. Quantum encryption is a way that we make sure that our laptops are secure, and we have USB plugs that use quantum technology. It is one of the major principles behind quantum computing and quantum encryption. But it wasn't until recently that we realized that what Einstein said, yes, is true, is actually true. And
that's amazing.
It's also given us one other insight, Jonathan, and that is that when we did the test, I'm talking about humans, when we did this test, we separated particles at a great enough distance that we knew that if they were to communicate with each other in some way, that it needs to travel at the speed of light.
Gotcha.
The speed of light in physics is a hard law that says nothing can travel faster than the speed of light.
So we thought.
So that means it takes, 186,000 miles per second for information to get from one thing to the other.
Gotcha.
So when we changed the spin is just a way of looking at a particle, but let's call it the bruise on the apple.
Okay.
And we bruised one apple, and the other apple was far enough away in space that we could measure how long it would take for the communication to get there.
Sure.
We realized that it was instantaneous.
Still.
It wasn't at the speed of light. And so the only conclusion that physicists could have, and anyone working in the field has, is that there is no space in between anyone.
That's amazing.
There's no space at all.
Folks, if you think about this, and it gets really far out at this point, because in the spirituality of oneness, this is not just a physical experience. And folks, by the way, when we think about light traveling, think about the universe out there, and you may have heard when the star went supernova, trillions of light years away, and it took this X amount of light years for it to arrive in order for us to see this light. What we're seeing is actually the history of something that took place hundreds of millions of years ago, perhaps. So we're seeing the presence. That light took time to travel through space to get to our eyes, to get to our measuring instruments. So what Steve is saying is that when they divided these two particles across space now, correct, Steve? Across space, far enough that it would take time through light speed to commute from one particle to communicate to another, and they were so far apart that still, when the apple bruised, there was no space seemingly, there was no light speed, the other apple bruised instantaneously as well.
Right.
That's amazing.
So it leads into oneness there, because without space, we're all at the same point.
That's amazing.
And you can look at how particles become entangled is to be in close proximity with each other at the event of their creation. So if you look at the Big Bang in physics, which is saying that we all came from a single point that exploded out into the universe full of gas and dust and atoms that was originally free-floating atoms and energy, technically, all particles that came from that singularity would be entangled immediately. So the entire universe should be in a state of quantum entanglement because of the origin event.
So in the physical nature of this universe that we exist within, because we all came from a point within a singularity, this point, not anything, doesn't matter how far expanded away its nature is and how large it gets, it will always act as if it's in a point.
Because it actually is.
So
because far is an illusion.
So, folks, if you think about this, I know this got deep for us today in this moment, in this conversation, but we're talking about the idea of oneness. Folks, this is the depth of where we are at in the world, in the universe, and life itself. So what we do is we take this consideration, the idea that when we break us down to our purest essence, we are a oneness. And we do actually affect each other instantaneously. But there are so many of us affecting the instantaneous moment that it creates this kind of, I have to think, this kind of frequency nature within us as a collective, that in doing so, Steve, I talk about projection reflection. That we're talking physicality here, and we're saying that, okay, this is all great. We're in a physical nature. We are a oneness. But tell me, I asked before, the idea of a consciousness, the idea that the force, there's something that is being filtered through all this.
Correct.
How does that relate to the idea of oneness? How do we bring consciousness into this equation?
It's a difficult thing to look at in our universe. Is consciousness part of the universal underlying consciousness that is the field that creates matter, creates our universe? Or is it separate and at a higher level? In physics, we have 11 dimensions in string theory. So we technically would be living in the fourth dimension. So we know there are higher level dimensions. And existence isn't something where you only exist in one dimension and not the next. You exist in all of them simultaneously. It's just where our focus is drawn.
Interesting.
So for consciousness, just looking at it from what I talked about from a particle perspective, these particles that I talked about being strings of energy, they actually pop in and out of existence and completely regenerate. They die and are reborn a million times a second.
Whoa.
It's very hard to hold consciousness.
Whoa, hold it. Wait a second.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Wait. Whoa. Okay, hold it. All right, so right now, all of us, everybody who's listening to this, we are actually popping in and out of existence. But again, it's going so fast. I'm cycling so fast, I cannot see that I'm popping in and out of existence.
What we're made of is popping in and out of existence.
Then how come I feel the stabilized experience of existence? Is it so fast that it generates it's like a vibration? Wait, am I nothing more than a vibration?
That's what we're talking about.
Oh my gosh! You mean my particle self is the illusion? I am nothing more than a vibration?
Very possibly. Yeah.
And this is what I talk about, folks. When I take my cells down to molecules, my molecules to atoms, yada yada, all the way down. We're nothing more than a collection of wave patterns, frequency and vibration. Seemingly what congeals us is what I'm going to call, for the back of it, a word, consciousness, or a mind force, let's say. It's interactive. Is it two sides of the same coin? Is one using the other? I think that's part of what the discussion we're having here. We don't know if this idea of consciousness or mind is outside of the physical nature or woven into the physical nature. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe it's woven in, but also outside. And so the question becomes, if our consciousness is what you describe as a soul, at what point is it not one? How long does it stay separate? And are there varying degrees of separation? Clearly, when we're here in this physical world, if our consciousness exists outside of it, it achieves some of its individuality from the fact that it's tied to our neurons and our physical brain structure. But one step removed, the next dimension up, there's still a level of separateness there. How is it achieving that separateness in that dimension? And then, as we roll all the way back up, and this is maybe a discussion for another time, but when we reach that 11th dimension where we have ultimate possibility in a single point, well, that's oneness. So does it take a while for our consciousness to achieve that? I don't know. Wow.
Okay, folks, that went deep for me. That was fantastic. I love it because I follow Steve because I swim in the pool with him at times around these sort of things, and I really do get it. But what I'm getting from your statement, Steve, is this: that whatever the consciousness is that generates the distinctions, the individuated frequency fields of itself, that we are not these. I mean, as much as a red light may appear as a red light, it's still an outcome of white light, or it's still a white light in a red form, I guess. In other words, the greater consciousness is the overall consciousness. I guess you could say that we are the consciousness acting itself out as us, and that we experience this.
Filters create the world,
and that we experience this separation is actually, this experience of separation is actually an illusion from the source. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, a great way to look at it is an old projector.
Okay.
Movie projector.
Okay.
So you shine a white light source on our screen.
Mm-hmm.
That white light is actually every possibility imaginable. And when you put a slide in front of it, or film, what you're doing is you're subtracting light. So that white light hits it, and not all of it goes through. Only a little bit goes through. And the parts that go through are in different colors because all the rest has been filtered out. And what you see on the screen is the picture. And that's reality for us when we see that. But the true reality is the white light that was projected. We subtracted to be able to see the picture. So,
you know, folks, when I talk about in a past show, Life Between Lies, Regression, I talk about how souls, as we've discovered, never leave the spiritual dimension. That what we do is we project a certain amount of our consciousness into a life form. And in that way, we are never separate from ourselves, but we are distinguished from ourselves in some way. We are experiencing a different frequency within our nature. In that way, Steve, what you're saying is that, let's say the soul is the light and the screen is my human Jonathan. What you're saying is that the projector and the screen are the same thing.
Yeah. Essentially, yes. But your true essence is filtered.
Right.
To become Jonathan.
You get that, folks? Your true essence is filtered to become the one that you are. So when we speak of the idea, the context of spirituality, of oneness, you know, we're looking at our relationship, and that's what, to me, what oneness really helps us understand, our relationship to one another, because that's really what it distinguishes, and the recognition that our relationship is, we are not separate. We are truly a oneness, from even broken down to the physical parts of our being. I love the idea of entanglement, Steve. The fact that if we all came from this one spot, this one singular pinpoint, and emerged into this universal experience, that doesn't matter. We are still all a part of this entanglement with one another. We are constantly having this interaction, this feedback, this effect on one another.
That's correct.
Wow. So, in regards to the idea of oneness, is there a God? How do you like that for that was a left curve, that's for sure. That's a curve from left field. So tell me.
If there's oneness, then we are a God. But yeah, wow. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Wow.
But there's definitely a higher version of ourselves.
Gotcha.
We follow the laws of physics and string theory. That there would be a higher version of ourselves that may very well roll up as we go.
Understood.
Yeah, there's something.
So what does that mean then? Okay, I get the big picture of oneness, but what does that mean in relation to myself as a soul when I come into my human life and I have another across from me who is opposing me, who is acting in a way that is creating disturbance within me? How do I relate to them now?
That's their separateness from you. And is it a purposeful separateness is what we have to ask ourselves. And that's a philosophical question, not a physics question.
Well,
so, we can look at why reality is what it is, and it doesn't make sense that it should even exist, reality, unless there's some purpose behind it. And it seems, if you start looking at dimensions, again, maybe context for another show, but when we look at it, why does the fourth dimension not allow you to experience choices that you can in the fifth dimension? Just to clarify for the readers, in the next dimension up, there's a split timeline. So technically, if I decided to make a choice, I could explore both options, see which one worked out best, and choose the one that worked out best and the other one never existed. Now, that makes life really easy. The funny thing is, on a quantum scale, really small, that's how plants work and bacteria works. They actually allow for light to come into them and go different pathways through, and whatever one was the most efficient, guess what? That was reality, and the others never existed. So they exploit this weird fifth-dimensional behavior, this higher level behavior, that we don't get that chance. And so we have to ask ourselves, is there a reason we don't have that chance? And the best answer I could give you from a philosophical standpoint would be that if we had that ability, we'd never learn.
I see, because the choice, we'd always be able to evaluate through the options of choice. We could see down each timeline and then choose which timeline was best for the choice. That's right. I got you. And thus, you do that, you're never going to, I don't know. Would you learn, though? Because then you'd be able to distinguish the good and bad choices along the way. Wouldn't you kind of learn how to identify a good choice?
You never learn the hard way, right?
Well, you grow is another story.
There would never be any fear or any worry about making a bad choice. So, there's got to be some purpose behind it, because obviously the world that we live in functions in both fourth and fifth dimension. Fifth dimension is present. That is quantum physics, by the way. Because when we look small, we can see through the cracks. So you asked me about this opposing person who's very different than me. And all I can say, and this is where I got probably sidetracked, but all I can say is that there probably is a reason that they're opposing you.
And that's what I talk about, folks. The idea that the other is not an opposer of mine, but a participant, because there is purpose, there is meaning, there's a reason. Because I am activated, and Steve asked, he made a statement about, what would identify such an experience? And I say, well, when you're activated, when you experience dissonance within your psyche, well, then that lets you know the other is there for a purposeful moment. Generally speaking, of course. They're there to help you see something within yourself because you got activated, and then you wouldn't get activated otherwise. And through activation, you are now able to identify the state of dissonance through thought and feeling, which is the feedback to your system of the self, so that you can see the value of the other that is opposing you, so to speak, that is actually participating, but not just the value. You find the value through the meaning for you, so that you can grow through this. So the idea of oneness, Steve, is it sounds like it's a part of a grand scale, and then we interact independently or separately. Yet no less as a oneness, even though we have the experience of separateness.
Right. Separation for a purpose.
For a purpose. Now,
but one is a reality.
And what would be the purpose of oneness?
Well, that's like asking for the meaning of life.
Well, give me the scientific, give me the physics purpose, because energy seems to express itself. I'll say it that way. Gravity is one form of energy, the weak nuclear forces, the strong, all that stuff. There seems to be an expression of energy, and I get that. But electromagnetic, another expression of energy. But so let's take it. Let's look at the purpose of energy itself. What would be the purpose of it? Because my view is this, Steve, that energy is always moving to its optimum resonant state. Its peak.
It does. And that state is actually a diluted state. So we can look at a glass of water with a drop of food coloring. And so this talks about entropy and disorder.
Okay, hold on.
We can look at it two ways.
Help people understand entropy.
Sure. Well, entropy essentially is the state of disorder of something. So it is the movement from order to disorder.
And in a closed system,
entropy is one of the laws of thermodynamics.
Got you. In a closed system, it is constantly moving. The system is constantly moving from a state of order and disorder. It's always in that kind of fluctuation.
It's moving to the state of disorder, and by disorder I mean delusion. Dilution. So not delusion, dilution. So that you can imagine like putting a drop of food coloring in a glass of water.
Oh, dilution.
It's very concentrated, and disordered when it first enters.
Okay.
And given time, it achieves the maximum dilution it has. It is spread out completely disordered uniformly through the glass of water to the point where it's just a slightly different color. And that is entropy. So likewise, a room, I have 4 children. So if I clean my living room and I unleash the kids in the living room, they will show me what entropy means. And they will tear that room apart until it becomes so messy that it cannot be any more messy. There's nothing else they can do to make it more messy. And so that's entropy as well.
So that's a natural experience within a closed system.
Yeah, and it moves to it's a low state of energy. So it's moving from high energy states to low energy states, where it's diluted and uniform. However,
so let me ask you this then.
Universe.
Let me ask you this: are we the outcome of this high energy to low energy state experience? Is that what we are in this world that we are? Are we the outcome of a low energy state?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I don't think so. And that's where purpose comes in, because the only way that you can counteract entropy is with an outside force. So let's take gravity, for instance. So we should be in a universe in which all the particles are equally spread out through our universe. But they're not. They're clumped together in dynamic ways, with stars being born and planets and solar systems spinning into black holes. And so black holes are outside forces of gravity. They help our universe form order. And so there's some thought or some process that's creating order in a state that should be moving towards disorder. If you ask that we are just, in our lowest energy state, that I don't agree that we are.
So what I'm hearing, though, is it's an irony.
Outside force with us.
We still come back to the idea of thought, of consciousness, and how it all seems to be woven into all this. And so, and I love the realization that even in the physical nature of our being, we are entangled. We are literally in a oneness state, even though we have this illusion of separation and distance, between us. The same as the illusion of the distance between, I guess, within an atom. I mean, it's still
Sure.
And so that to me is most fascinating. And thus, folks, when I talk about the spirituality of oneness, I'm really emphasizing the realization that, again, even in breaking it down to our physical nature, but then Steve mentions, of course, beyond the law of thermodynamics, our quantum nature. And that's where Steve really tells me, Jonathan, that's where the oneness really exists. That's where you'll really find the oneness in that way. And that's where oneness is most identified in its purest experience. And so, Steve, I'm wondering, as far as the idea of oneness, what does science do with it? Because face it, I'm amazed. I'm amazed that we don't hear more scientists, more physicists saying, folks, we're not doing this right. You're all walking around in some sort of delusion. And, we really are in this moment all entangled and we're not doing this. We could be doing this so much better.
Right.
How come?
The human ego. So if you actually look and listen out there in the world, there are scientists and leaders that do talk about this. That Elon Musk, maybe not the greatest example from things that happened lately, but let's take Elon, right? He's definitely a respected business person. He started a major rocket company. He did PayPal before that. So he thinks that we're living in a complete matrix illusion. And he's come to that conclusion for a lot of the same reasons that many scientists and physicists have. It's not something that you just go spreading around that, hey, everyone, we might be living in the matrix. And I'm not talking a matrix created by aliens. I'm talking that we might be living in an artificial reality that tends to be more like a dream for the purposes of something. And it's probably learning, but we don't know. So, there's a lot of it out there. It's not really broadcast.
Well, the irony is that we are, what I'm hearing then, that is we're the screen. Something is projecting onto the screen, and we are the screen thinking that we are the projector.
It's the row, row, row your boat. Life is but a dream.
Yeah, I love that song. I know. We don't take it seriously. Yeah, love is but a dream. Absolutely. Steve, this has been fascinating. But when I look at the spirituality of oneness, and you know the work I do. I mean, you're very familiar with my thoughts around this.
I am.
What does it mean when we talk about that? And then because the physics of oneness. What does it mean if you could in your own way, you know, how do you see this fitting into the spirituality of life?
I kind of start top down. So this is I'm going to break away from physics.
Cool.
And I'm just going to talk logical
Cool.
in a non-physics way.
Uh-huh.
The way I look at it is, if it was just me as a single entity, and that's all that there was, and I can't look at myself. I can't have a conversation with myself. I can't express myself. But like the white light, I have so much potential that I can't even show, but it's all in there.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I'm going to do is split myself in half, and I'm going to try to have a conversation. And that's not going to go very well because I'm going to know exactly what the other me is going to say. It's the other half of me. I just split myself in two. And so, I could look at myself for the first time and say, hey, that's what Steve's energy or consciousness looks like.
Uh-huh.
But it's really not, it's not enough. And so what I want to do is I want to get as many perspectives as I possibly can on myself. And I want to test myself. And I want to explore all the various light colors that I could possibly be if I was that beam of white light. And so I'd split myself as many times as possible. And I'd make sure somehow that those parts of me that were talking back to me didn't know that they were me. Because if they did, the conversation's going to go flat.
Understood.
I need them to have some form of individuality.
Understood. It makes complete sense in the sense where, the relationship consciousness-wise, if there is no individuated self, then consciousness is a unified field of oneness, of symbiotic nature, where every thought, because of the non-locality, kind of the entanglement of it all, would be that it would be instantly received and indistinct from itself. It would not be able to distinguish itself from itself until it had
a filter.
Right, until it had an individuated experience of itself that was not it as a totality, but it as a individuality, I'll say.
Correct, yeah. And then different environments. I'd put those parts of me in various environments, run them through different scenarios that would seem very similar to everyone else, but it might be slightly different enough to provide a slightly different perspective on myself.
Amazing.
Right?
Amazing
So
how
that's the logical thought. It's a thought experiment is what we call it in physics, but it's not hardcore mathematical physics.
But in that sense, it's based on a logic. It's based on understanding through logic. It's based on the logical movement of what would be taking place when we are contextualizing the idea of a oneness on the physical or experience of it and its relation to experience to itself. Because, like you said, there has to be purpose. There has to be meaning.
Right.
But you mentioned a self. Do you think this oneness is a self? Because in the Buddhistic view, there's the idea, and again, based on the idea of the nature of where you come from, your background, is there a self context to this?
In Buddhism, there's a self system, which is their oneness. But I assume that if you roll up into this greater oneness, you're going to remember the rest of yourself every time that you do. And eventually when you get there should be some form of it. But that's my opinion.
I understand. It just you would think that it would have a qualitative experience. That once
I don't feel that we'd lose our consciousness.
What do you mean by that? Please tell me that.
I don't feel that we'd lose our consciousness, which is how we define ourselves.
Oh, are you saying?
I just feel like we'd gain the rest of us every time.
So, so the idea in the journey of souls is that we individuate from a source of all oneness, so to speak, and in that we then become distinct, and in that distinction we become an individual. We seemingly go through as souls these periods of incarnation. This movement to get to know ourselves, to get to experience and explore and grow and mature, but eventually move into greater integration. And what we understand, Steve, is that as we go into integration, we're able to maintain an individuated state while being also in the integrated state. And that seemingly when we get back into the field of I guess you would call it a oneness, we're able to be in both states at once. And is that something that sounds like it fits into the paradigm, or no, Jonathan, that really doesn't really qualify?
It fits into quantum physics because you can be an individual particle within a quantumly entangled system.
Wow.
In which acts as one, but yet is an individual particle.
Wow. Wow. See, I love it. I love it when science affirms what we're understanding as far as the work I do in psychology and spirituality. This is fantastic. Really, Steve, I so much appreciate all your insights and everything today. What would you like the audience to, if you would, I'm going to throw another one at you. What is the one takeaway from all this?
That's a good one.
Thank you. I know. Would you love it? Put you in the moment, of course.
Yeah, for me, what I've learned through my journey through science, and even some of what we've talked about, is just that the nature of our reality may be far more than we actually think it is. And if this is truly a simulation or a test, well, then, do something different. Do something that you want to do. Yeah. Don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, what I would leave the readers with, just from my personal perspective. But I do love seeing the merger of science and spirituality. Keep a watch on it. Look at the news articles. They're coming out every day. You'll see more and more of it. Kind of feel like we're at that cusp of discovery that's going to be major breakthroughs. But in general, I have to fall back on the fact that I try to take reality a little bit lighter than I used to.
Well, congrats to you. I always used to say this: life feels personal, but don't take it personally. I mean,
right.
folks, there's a quality in what Steve is saying, and I hear it as well. Have fun. I get it. We get that there's this relationship we have to the experience of the otherness around us and the events and everything else that may challenge us. But listen, become a championship jet skier in your life if that's something that tickles your fancy along the way of being a nuclear physicist and a quantum theorist and entrepreneur. Which I love. Folks, I get it. I get that the conversation tonight may have gone kind of deep and sciencey, but the point of the conversation in the end is that there is the fundamental relationship we have is that this is a oneness and we are expressions of oneness. And that means we are exchanging our experience together, affecting each other in an instantaneous way, all seeking to get to know ourselves or however it is. That's why I have in the quote on my advertisement, Steve, on the promo, one is the loneliest number, by Three Dog Night. Because,
right.
Man, if you're a oneness, gosh, I mean, like you said, you could never know yourself. There's nothing without you that you could ever discover unless you did something with that self.
Right.
So that's been...
But if you did something with a zillion pieces of yourself and you went back to being one, well, there's a lot of good memories, right?
Just incredible. Wow, Steve, thank you so much, man. I just so much appreciate it. Folks, this is my guest tonight was Steve Parlin. Steve, just once again, Yoga Smith, where do you find him?
You can go to yogasmith.com and you'll see the studios. We tried to take a Planet Fitness model to our yoga, so it's the reason why I started those is to make it affordable for the masses and get people into yoga and maybe find that relaxed state that we're all looking for. So welcome to check it out.
Fantastic. And folks, I'll tell you, there's an energy and attitude, that this is why there's 4 Yoga Smiths at this point, because it speaks to the people who are tuned to the yogic view, but also the energies. And also, of course, the nature of affordability, which is like really huge if you're going to commit to such a practice. I do appreciate that, Steve. Steve, thank you so ever much, man. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on the program tonight. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon. getting you back on the program and talking about other
Thanks.
other parts of the experience that we always talk about.
Appreciate you having me on, and hope everyone has a great night, and thanks for listening in. Jonathan, it's great to hear from you.
Yeah, right on, Steve. We'll be in touch. So that was Steve Parlin, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we shared today. I know we went a little deep. I know it sounded a little sciencey in many ways, but there is a bottom line. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of wrap this up in the last segment of the show. So what we're going to do is take a little break. If you have to take off, just remember you'll be able to catch this show on my Facebook page, live on the recorded on the Facebook page, Jonathan York's MALMFTCHT. You can also, I'll be downloading these on YouTube, on the Past Life Regression Radio Show YouTube channel. Episodes 1 through 6 are already on there, and you can check out the show there as well. At some point, I'm going to get these on some sort of a podcast site, but, me and my assistant, who is me, we're just doing so many things at once. If you want to contact me, if you have any questions about anything, please, 617-875-6686, or you can go to my website, jonathanyorks.com, and schedule a contact with me at that time. Initial consultations are always complimentary. There's never a charge for initial consultations. I'll be more than happy to talk with you and about the work perhaps you'd like to do with me, or any questions you may have about the things we talk about on the show. So, I'm Jonathan Yorks. This is the Past Life Regression Radio Show. We're here at the Go Network at gonet.com. We'll see you in 5 minutes to wrap things up.
So who are the real original housewives? Well, Sarah, Esther, Mary, and Ruth. Proclaim this and other Bible references on a shirt at OneBodyOneSpirit.com. One Body, One Spirit is a Christian-themed clothing store for ladies and men that allows believers to express their faith, glorify God, and start conversations through something as simple as a t-shirt. Plus, a portion of every purchase is donated to charities. Their website is Spirit.com to view their clothing selections. OneBodyOneSpirit.com.
Aren't you tired of your plain white walls? Do you ever wonder why you feel uninspired at the office or feel like your home lacks character? It's always the same boring walls over and over again. Well, it's time for a change. Visit walldecor3d.com and order wall panels that will turn your walls into beautiful and extravagant looking accent walls. The 3D wall panels give an extra dimension and complement just about any room. Their current selection includes plant fiber wall paneling, MDF wood wall panels, mosaic real wood paneling, and thin slate stone veneer. Remember, that's walldecor3d.com. Order now and add some depth to your life. Have you always wanted to make your own podcast? Or had dreams of becoming the next social media influencer? Don't let office space and equipment be what gets between you and your dreams. New studio space is now available through the Go Network. The Go Network is a multimedia broadcast company that currently hosts live radio shows and podcasts. With microphones to fit all guests, the ability to video record interviews, a stage for band performances, and an editing suite to put your audio and video content to the next level. The Go Network will provide assistance with producing, editing, sponsorship outreach, marketing, and more. You can create the podcast or web series you want with the lower price tag. Visit our studio location in Norwood or our audio suite in Canton. For more information, call us at 857-445-0424 or email us at info@gonet.com. That's info@GEAUXNET.com.
When I'm feeling sluggish, I'm not looking for the jittery feeling of coffee. I'm reaching for Neurosonic, the only energy drink I trust to keep me going. Neurosonic is just one of the great drinks in the neurofunctioning beverages line. When I'm stressing an interview, Neuro Bliss keeps me cool, calm, and collected. And when it's time to call it a night, I don't want sleeping pills and all the crazy after effects you hear about. I want Neuro Sleep to help me drift off to dreamland. Neuro drinks are surprisingly low calorie and full of the healthiest and most efficacious vitamins and minerals. Artificial flavors and colors don't work for them, and neither should they for you, so they don't allow them in their drinks. To find a store near you that carries Neuro, go to drinkneuro.com or visit amazon.com to order a 12-pack. Neuro, drink with a purpose.
Are you in need of stickers, be it for personal or business use? Then you need to go to stickeryou.com right now. That's stickeryou.com. Sticker U is passionate about providing you and your business with the highest quality custom stickers, labels, decals, and iron-ons. They can even make you temporary tattoos. If you want to stick out from the competition, then you need Sticker U, as Sticker U provides the best platform in the world to create custom products that make you stick.
Has your computer seen better days? Is it always freezing and lagging? Are you constantly plagued with pop-ups and viruses? Are you not able to get any work done? You don't need a new computer. You need Phoenix Technology Support. With just one call to Phoenix Technology Support, you will never have to stress over the hassles of taking your computer to a repair shop again. Just leave your computer right where it is and let us come directly to you. Phoenix Technology Support has over 10 years of experience in the industry of customer support and IT solutions, and it's the best place for help with all of your home or business electronics. From gaming systems to tablet setups, smartphones to smart TVs, even business servers and emails. We will help set up or troubleshoot almost any technology in your home or office. So next time you think your technology is at the end of its life, have it rise from the ashes like a phoenix by calling Phoenix Technology Support at 617-658-3240. That's 617-658-3240, or go to www.phoenixtechboston.com.
If you're just hearing about Monk Therapeutic Air for the first time, it's a recyclable diffuser that promotes mood change and life-enhancing effects through our custom blends of essential oils in the ancient practice of aromatherapy. Monk is the simplest aromatherapy device in history. You don't have to know anything about essential oils. We do all that for you. Simply pick the way you want to feel, open your Monk, and breathe in as your Monk diffuses an eclectic blend of essential oils and wild plant extracts. Monk is available in 7 different blends, all of which are organic, natural, and free of nicotine, tobacco, or artificial chemicals. Visit monq.com to learn more.
I'm Jonathan Yorks, and you're listening to the Past Life Regression Radio Show. Welcome back to the Past Life Regression Radio Show, where we help you see your life through your spiritual eyes and think through your spiritual mind as a soul. I'm Jonathan Yorks, and we're streaming live here at the Go Network at gonet.com. We're coming into the very last part of our show, and we had a wonderful guest on today, Steve Parlin, who helped us see the sciencey side of oneness. The idea that when we break ourselves down to our most fundamental nature, we are literally a oneness. In our particle nature, in our energy nature, we are what we called entangled, which means that we have instantaneous effect on each other. That's amazing to me, because it speaks so much to our relationship. You know, when I talked about on episode 4 on the spirituality of the soul, I said that really the idea that we are a soul is kind of a misstatement, because what we are is we are beings of life expressed through 4 dimensions of self-experience. And Stephen even made a statement that, you know, that the idea that there's a quality of selfness to this experience. And the 4 dimensions of the self-experience I mentioned, one was the idea of a one self, that we are truly a oneness, along with the divine self, a creator self, and a neural self. And that's a story, that's more, go back to episode 4 and you'll hear more about that. And we'll talk much more about each one in other programs. But the idea that these 4 qualities of ourself are all in relation to each other, all interactive, all operating at the same time. But we all are the effect of a oneness, and our most fundamental experience of each other. No matter how we want to relate to it, we are generating effect upon each other. And what we didn't talk about, and what I wanted to get Steve on here next time to talk about, Steve talked about thoughts. Thoughts and thoughts that they actually mimic I wish I could recall, and I'll have to go back, but they mimic the quantum, the physics nature. And that they actually are both the same thing or quality of that. I'll get him on there. I'll get clarification. Maybe beginning of the next show, he'll give me clarification and I can speak more clearly to that. But the idea that these thoughts of ours are also electromagnetic impulses that are radiating into this whole energetic sphere that we exist within. And that within that reality, the spirituality of oneness is the foundation, the fundamental truth to our nature, that we are not separate from each other, that we are different forms of each other. And because of that, oneness qualifies our relationship to each other. There are no opposers, only participants. There are no events that occur that create challenge that are not participating with our journey of maturation, our journey of growing through a lesson in a lifetime, so that we can evolve our selfhood, the purpose of our nature as souls, in the human lives that we exist within. But we don't exist separate from each other. Shoot, we don't even exist separate from ourselves. We are filtered. And I love that understanding. Because just because there's a filtration doesn't mean that what is being filtered is separate from the filtered experience. No, it's still like a light going through a prism. The radiance of the different colors of light that go through the prism are not separate from the light that is actually shining into the prism itself. They're just different frequencies. It's different, individuated frequency fields within the light itself. These distinctions that seem to be separate. But like Steve said, it's an illusion. Like Einstein said, separation is the illusion of the senses. Or I'm paraphrasing, paraquoting in that moment. And when we take this into consideration, when we honor this as a value of our relationship to one another, well, now you're getting it. Now you're moving into the spirituality of your being. Now you give yourself a chance to fulfill the life you are in. Because you can see the reflections. You'll be able to see the feedback coming through the mind of your being and the events around you. And when you can distinguish these reflections as a mechanism of helping you see yourself as a soul, well, then you'll get their participation. You will find their meaning for you. And you will gain in the value of it. And in the end, you will find there was never a forgiveness required in the first place. Because it was all planned. It was all purposeful. It was all participatory. And that's the idea behind the spirituality of oneness. It's all about our relationship. We are not separate from life. We are generated by life, as life. Individuated. A different frequency field, a different color within the spectrum of all white light, so to speak. And there's infinite frequencies within this light. Infinite combinations. I just did a little burp. Infinite combinations of the wave patterns of light. It is an infinite journey that we are on. But while we're here, in this human experience, listening to the Past Life Regression radio show on Wednesdays from 7 to 9 p.m. and immersing ourselves into an identification that I am a spiritual being. I am having a human experience. I am not separate from the journey I am on right now. I am actually within it, present, in everything that is my condition, everything that is my challenge, everything that requires me to make choice, and through the radiance in which I make that choice. All of this is having an effect on the field of ourselves, in the field of oneness. So when you work on you in the field of oneness, when you bring the best of your radiance, and when you find yourself in a dissonant state or dissonant experiences, dissonant relationships, and you find that within this experience that there is a means of moving along, meaning the relationship will not stay the same. The relationship must morph, it must change, it must grow. Sometimes when they grow, the relationships alter and the connection alters along with it. And we think, oh, I don't want to hurt the other. Oh, I don't want to hurt things. I don't want to affect things. I don't want to create pain in the world. So what I'll do is I'll live the pain myself, this experience of dissonance, and I'll suppress it on a daily basis. I'll put it in a place of denial until something happens outside of me that ignites me and I feel it, and I won't be able to suppress it any longer. And let me tell you, as you get older, this organ called the brain, as I tap my head, it does not get stronger. It actually gets a little weaker. And whatever is unresolved within the neural structures of this brain of yours will act themselves out even more. So if you're somebody who seems to be negativistic and you're doing very well at suppressing negativism because you go into places where you have to mind your P's and Q's in the moment, but you never alter the negativistic patterns that you are minding and suppressing, as they get older, as you get older, at some point you will be saying these things, and others around you are going to be looking at you going, what? What was that? That's not the person I knew. What's going on? Well, because the person that they knew was suppressing their own state of experience without changing it. And that's exhausting. The idea of oneness, it relates to every experience we have, through our individuated self and the oneness within our own unique experience of our being, to the oneness we share with all of life. It's amazing to me. It's amazing the journey that we are on. It's amazing that if you're not waking up in the morning, looking in the mirror and acknowledging the incredible nature of who you are, you're denying yourself. You're denying yourself a fullness that when we start to look further into it is already there. It's already there. You're just looking at a very small piece of it. Focused, as Steve would talk about, the attention. Attention is really where it goes. What you're giving attention to. You know, in the world of law of attraction stuff, where your thoughts go, the energy will flow. And we're going to do another show on the law of attraction itself. And maybe I'll get Steve on and we'll talk more about the physics of that. How the exchange occurs. How my thoughts are interacting with the field of life around me, and how the field of life me is responding in a physical way. Because we can see these things as metaphysical. We can see this idea of a soul as kind of a spiritual concept. But if there's no basis, if there's no science to it, there's no logic to it, then it's just wish fulfillment. And I'm not digging on wish fulfillment, you know? I love to wish, sure, you know, wishing is fun. But it's not a reality. And in that sense, I'd like to be grounded. I want my spirituality to be grounded in reality, not in mythology, not in wish fulfillment. So this is why I bring the sciencey stuff into this work that I do. I don't do it with my clients and go deeply sciencey into it, but I have these people in my life who speak to me in this way and help me see that what I'm saying, when I talk about oneness and the spirituality of oneness, that it affirms it, validates it in many ways. It doesn't put a stamp on it and says this is absolutely what it is. Because in quantum nature, it's all a field of probability. And we are the probabilistic outcome of ourselves. And I won't go deep on that one. But I will say this. We are shapeshifters. As Steve said, we are blinking in and out of existence. And we are constantly, every time we blink back in, we are reformed in that moment. Now, imagine taking your consciousness and engaging it, directing it, and letting it know where you want to take it, what you want to see formed within you and around you. Yes, you have to make choice. Yes, you'll have to radiate, resonate, project the energies of feelings and thoughts in a way that aligns to the outcome you seek to create, because in the relationship of oneness, as you project, you will get that response. It will provide that reflection. And the people around you will do that as well. And your job around you, and your life around you, and the world around you. And when we start to move into that recognition, the very first realization, the fundamental truth of our reality, we are one. Dig it. That's pretty cool to me. So, in the recognition of oneness, to all my spiritual kin, to all those other forms of us, I say thank you for joining in. The idea of spirituality, of oneness, again, to me, is the foundation from which we all come from. And that we are truly a oneness in our being. And how I relate to you, the thoughts, even that I project out from my mind towards you, and the feelings, that you are actually receiving this. Like, like the two particles that are passed off in distance, as Steve talked about. They instantly communicate, even though they're so far apart. They could not communicate instantly because they don't travel. They can't travel fast in the speed of light. And they find that, yes, you can. There is no space in that regard. That there is systemic entanglement. Now, entanglement, again, oneness. Instantaneously affecting one another. And if you wake up in the morning and you go into your world and you are not aware of that you are not mindful of it, then you're not taking on the responsibility of what we all share in. You're not uplifting our being. You are actually generating an experience within our being, our totality, that is like the aching toe that got stubbed, that got, the pulsating, aching toe. And that affects all of us. So understand that all around you is there is there for your purpose, for your fulfillment, to bring you meaning, so that you can be challenged to grow, challenged to make choice. See those around you as ones who are reflections of otherness, but otherness in the sense of the other of you, the other form of what we are. See them as purposeful. See the events around you as purposeful. Understand and identify on the oneness of life that we all share within. And as you do, you will find that your relationship, that you will bring greater positivity into a world that may feel sometimes overwhelmingly emphasized in the negative. I get it. I get why we emphasize in the negative when we've talked about how the brain is a highly negativistic creature. And we'll go back into that some other time. But your responsibility isn't just to remain in negativity, nor to rationalize your negativity. Your responsibility is to know the effect you're having on us, on the other, in the moment of negative projection. And if you can't see the harm you're creating from it, the dissonance, then you're not living within the spirituality of oneness. And you're living within the illusion of separation. So recognize what we are, how we're doing this in relation to oneness, and as you do, you will find a difference in how you experience your life around you. The feedback system of all that is feeding back to you for the purpose of helping you know yourself so that you can choose and grow. Oh, I see that we've gone over our time. It is after 9 o'clock. I want to thank you for joining into the Past Life Regression radio show. You can catch the recording here on Facebook, on my Facebook page at Jonathan Yorks, MALMFTCHT. You can go to the YouTube channel, Past Life Regression radio show, and you can get to the first 6 episodes there already. The next ones will be on there. We'll be back next week. Next week's show, I'm trying to get some people to come on the show to talk about their past life regressions. Next week's show, past life stories with people who have had past life regressions. And we'll talk all about their stories. They'll share with us their experience and the effect of the past lives they had, their experience on their present life. It'll be an awesome show. Always fun to hear stories as such. So, next week, 7 to 9 p.m., The Intention, past life stories from clients of mine, from people who have had past life regressions. I want to thank you for joining in this evening. I am Jonathan Yorks. We're here at the Go Network every Wednesday from 7 to 9 p.m. at gonet.com. We'll see you next week. And to all, over the next week, be wonderfully well. Thank you again.